guys, and welcome to this segment of Crafting and Crime with Charlie. I have a really good story for you today, kind of disturbing. It's about the boy fiend of Boston, the boy slayer. I'll get more into that in a minute. But today, I'm going to introduce you to the project we're going to be working on. So this is the cup we're going to be making, and this is the glass I decided to use because I just happened to have them on hand and I wanted to deck them out a little bit. You can use this on wine goblets, regular glasses, whatever you have around the house or you want to buy. And obviously this isn't the only design you can do. But this is a pretty simple design with the vinyl cut by the Cricut machine and the rhinestones, which very simple, but I can rhinestone with the best of them. All right. So first thing you're going to do is if you have a Cricut machine, this is the directions you're going to follow. All right, guys, real quick, I'm going to walk you through the cutting of the vinyl face. We go into my Cricut Maker app. We go plus. I already have the little face there because I already cut it, but I'm going to get rid of it and show you guys how. So I'm going to hit replace, come up to upload. We have take a photo, select photo library, browse files, or open uploaded images. I'm going to do the upload it because it's already in there. There's my little face. I click on it, make sure there's a little green around so we know we have it, and hit add. Now we're going to take it, we'll move it to the corner. Now, as you see right now, it is almost 5.5 inches the long way, and it's at 4.5 up and down. That's too big for our glass. So I'm going to push it in. I'm going to do it just a smidge over 4 and just a little less than 4 the long way. The reason I do that is because when you hit make it and you wind up here, as you notice, it gets bigger. So now it's 4.5 the long way. And it is 4 inches exactly up and down, which is perfect for the size of the glass that we're doing. We're going to hit next. Now remember, you don't have to mirror this because we are actually using outdoor premium vinyl, which is going to be cut on the shiny side. Here it is for this step. I already have, as I said, premium outdoor vinyl is preset. I'm going to hit on that. I do not use default when it comes to that just because I would need a nicer cut. So I do more. Just some of the vinyl can be really strong. And I want to make sure I cut it completely. From there, I will go to my Cricut machine and press the go. And then it'll print it out. And then we just have to weed it. Now, some of you might want to do this project but do not have a Cricut Maker. That's fine. You can use a marker to draw the outline of this particular face. You can do it with a template or you can do it freehand, and you can actually put the rhinestones onto that by gluing them. Now, 2 things. Some people like to rough it up with a file, just a little bit around where you're gonna draw to make the stones stick better. I don't particularly do that, but I've heard it works better. I've been lucky, none of the stones have fallen out when I've used that technique. Yeah, so that's basically how you're gonna get that little face to put on the glass that we're making today. And back to our video. See, it wasn't that hard. So now we have it, I put it on here. As you can see, now one of the things you wanna make sure is that when you're laying the vinyl down, that you want to make sure that you don't have any bubbles. It's okay if there's bubbles on the plastic adhesive that you have on top, whether you use transfer tape or regular tape. This actually happens to be shipping tape that I like to use. What you want to do, though, is before you do it, I personally will put the tape sticky side down on a cloth or even on my pants for a couple of times, just so it's not super, super sticky, just sticky enough to make sure it holds on to that. So then once you do that, you basically take it off, making sure that your vinyl design stays on the glass, because that would be very important. And one of the things you want to be aware of is that when you're putting it on, because the glass has a curve, you might need to cut some slits into the transfer plastic, not the vinyl plastic, so it lays flat and you don't get any bubbles in it. There you go. All right, so pretty much that's it right there. Before you do start, you want to make sure that you clean your glass off with either alcohol, which I happen to use, need to refill. I either use alcohol or you can use nail polish remover. That actually works pretty good too. So you want to wipe it down with a cloth or cotton ball, however you want. Wipe it down really good and then make sure it's dry. So that way the adhesive will stick better. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Again, I use crystal glaze just because I really, really like the way it works. And I don't know, there's something about the product that I really like. It's heavy duty And the smell is not as strong as E600, 6000. But then you can use this too. I know for some other projects I do use it because it is pretty strong. But this one kind of stays up there with it. I also like the dispenser on this. It's pinpoint, so it's easier to use. All right, for this project, we're going to be using jelly rhinestones. I got these from, let's see, Planet Rhinestone. Love that place. And on the jelly rhinestones, not the regular ones, the non-hot fix, they actually have a special going on that if you buy one packet for $6, you get an additional one for free from the jelly category. So all you have to do is code jelly, and then you'll see the discount instantly before you check out, which is really pretty good. That was a way for me to stock up. So everybody has different ways of doing this. I personally, because these stones are so small, I'm going to use the 3mm for the eyebrows and the eyes. Now, it's up to you how you want to do it. If you noticed, I actually used the 4mm on the eyebrow, and then I used the smaller stones on the eyeshadow and on the lips. The reason I did that is because I feel like these pops a little bit more. And I did use the big stones on the eyelash part because just it would cover it. And then the 3mm is what I stuck to mostly because of the size of it. And honestly, you can use bigger stones if you want, because the reality is that even though this is the vinyl you have, you can literally glue over that. It's just a guide, really. All right, so colors, whatever you want to use, you can use. I know this sounds silly, but I use my little tiny spoon to get it out. So for this particular project, I did black on the eyebrows. I wasn't too happy with it just because of the fact that you couldn't see it that good. So I'm going to go with a little black that I have here that has a little shimmer to it. And this is called Star Night. Okay, so we're going to use that for the eyebrows. And then, of course, when we get into the lips and all that stuff, we'll go from there. All right, let's get to beading. So, the boy fiend from Boston. I'm telling you, when I read this story, it blew my mind. And doing the research, I was like, this is incredible. Now, we're going to step back to 1859. This is when our boy fiend, who was born Jesse Pomeray, was born. Now remember, this is 1859. Okay, 1859, back in the day. We didn't know about behavior analysis units. We didn't know what a serial killer was. The concept of a young child doing some of the crimes that he did, just, it didn't register with people back in the day. Anyway, so he was born, he was the second son of Thomas and Ruth Pomeray. Now, Thomas was a dock worker who was an alcoholic. And by all stretches of the imagination, he was very, very abusive. For some bizarre reason, though, he was more abusive with Jesse than he was with his older brother. One of the things that he would do, just to back up a little bit, so Jesse was born and he had some illness. They call it humor back in the day. I tried to look up what that meant, but I couldn't figure it out. If anybody knows, please comment below, because I wasn't sure what it is. It sounded like some kind of, I don't know, smallpox, something, whatever it was. He got this illness. And as a result of this illness, as a baby, he wound up getting this white film, almost like a cataract, on one of his eyes. And that resulted in him being bullied and made fun of most of his life. Now, on top of that, he was very big for his age. So he looked a lot older than the other kids did. And that also kind of put him subject to teasing, which just wasn't cool. So for some reason, his father had this thing of beating him mercilessly. He would take him out back in some shed they had or whatever, and he would just hit this poor kid. And again, I only say poor at this point in time because he is a child. I'm talking from the time he was very young, and he would literally make him strip down to nothing and just beat him till he was tired and couldn't beat him anymore. So when Jesse was about 5 years old, the neighbor complained that he had seen him stab a cat and throw him into the river. Yes, we know what's coming next. The mom, Ruth, for all intensive purposes, was a decent mom, but unfortunately, she had blinders on when it came to her kids. She just didn't see anything wrong with that. So her solution was to move family from Charlestown. She moved them to South Boston. Now, at that time, there was already stories circulating of children getting beat up or abused in the neighborhood. But, people didn't think it was a child, they would do it. So fast forward now, this is what blows my mind. So we're living in South Boston, they are, and this child is 10 years old. Yes, 10 years old. So we're going to 1871. This was the day after Christmas, December 26th. And Jesse goes out and he lures a 4-year-old little boy named William Payne. And what he would do is he would lure them with, oh, you want to go get some candy? You want to go hang out with me? And of course, 4-year-old little boy sees an older kid paying attention to him. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And unfortunately, what he did is he took him into this abandoned house, tied him up, literally like hung him up, and just beat on this poor kid. And luckily, the kid was able to get away. Some neighbors heard commotion or whatever, and, Jesse ran away so they didn't see who did it, but they rescued the kid. So fast forward 2 months after, now we're talking February 22nd of 1872. Now he grabs this kid named Tracy Hayden. Now he was 7 years old. Same thing. He's, oh, I'm going to give you some candy. Come hang out with me. We'll have a good time. And what he does is the same thing. He takes this kid, ties him up, and just beats on him mercilessly. Now, one of the things that you guys might have heard on, and you'll see the pattern here. So fast forward to May 20th of 1872. Now there's a kid, Robert Mayer. He's 8 years old. Same thing. He grabs them, he beats them mercilessly, and somehow manages to get away. The thing that gets me is if you notice that it went from 2 months to 3 months. Okay, so we have a lag time there. But then the next assault was exactly 2 months later, which was on July 22nd. And that was John Balch. He was also 8 years old. Now, same thing, a beating. Now his cooling off period, as is known in behavioral science, because serial killers or serial abusers, they have a period of time that they quote unquote cool off. And there's a pattern there. But as they de-escalate, getting out of control, the crimes get closer and closer, which is what started happening here. And the crime started devolving. So in August 17th of 1872, he wind up grabbing this kid. His name was George Platt. Now, George was only 7 years old. Now, in this case, it got a little extreme because instead of just beating them, now he was whipping them. And he was using implements like needles, and he was biting him and scratching him to hurt this kid. So he was completely losing control when it came to that. So from there, we move forward to September 5th. So you notice there's a pattern here that he's escalating, he's doing it more and more. And each time he does it, the crime gets more and more brutal. So on September 5th, 1872, he winds up attacking this kid, Harry Austin. Now, Harry Austin was, I think, 7 years old at the time. Yeah, he was 7 years old. So this poor kid, not only does he wind up, getting beat up, but he actually tried to stab him and, tried to hurt him by causing mutilation. But luckily, he wasn't successful. I mean, he did hurt the kid, and the kid was able to get away. Now, think about this. We are up to 5 victims. And the reality is that these kids were saying, oh, we got attacked by an older kid, blah, blah, blah. But the general consensus was that because he was taller than he really should be for his age, people just assumed it was a teenager doing this, like an older teenager doing it. They didn't imagine that it was a child. Then from there, we moved to September 10th. Now, you notice what I'm talking about with the de-escalation cooling off period. He actually wind up 5 days later kidnapping another kid, because basically that's all you can call it, is that he kidnapped them. And this time he grabbed this kid called Joseph Kennedy, who was 7 years old. Now, this time, same thing, he beat them and he, stabbed them with a knife. But one of the weird things he did is this time he was pouring salt water on the wounds. So he was really getting out of control, like sadistic out of control. And at this time, and again, normal people wouldn't know this, it's from my law enforcement experience, that you realize that unfortunately, one of the things that serial killers do, as we know them now, is that they kind of experiment a little bit until they find their thing. Horrific to say, but that's what it is. So he was escalating the violence on these kids. So this kid actually got away from him. So Joseph Kennedy winds up being able to get away from him. Then after that, on September 17th, you notice how quickly he's doing that now, right? He actually, same thing, he attacks this little kid. His name is Robert Gould. Now, he's only 5 years old. Now, this time, he totally loses control because he actually attempts to end this child's life, you know. So one of the things that, thank God he survived, but one of the things that happened was that Joseph Kennedy, the prior victim, they actually brought him to the police station to have him look at mugshots to see if he could identify the person that attacked him. So he went down there and he looked through the books and couldn't find anybody. He wasn't in there, obviously, because he's a young kid. He hadn't been arrested for anything yet. And we're talking in the 1800s. This is the thing that gets interesting because I don't know why he would do this. For some bizarre reason, Jesse Pomeray decides to go to the police station for whatever reason, I don't know. And it just so happens that Joseph Kennedy is there at the time. He sees him and he says, that's the guy. That's the kid that assaulted me. So, of course, he winds up getting arrested. So he was arrested basically either that day or the next day when the kid was there. I don't know if he was planning to go in there to give himself up or more of, hey, what's going on with the investigation kind of thing, you know, because it's been known in the past that certain type of narcissistic serial killer kind of killers do like to kind of interject themselves into the investigation so they can figure out what's going on and where it's headed and that kind of stuff. So I think basically that's, you know, it's sad to think that this kid was that smart, but apparently he was. He's like, let me go check out what's going on. And that resulted in him getting caught. So he winds up getting arrested and he got found guilty. And the crazy thing is, he's 11-ish, not even 12 yet. So Jesse winds up being sent to this juvenile facility because he was found guilty of assault and attempted murder. And because he was a juvenile, he was so young, they obviously tried him as a juvenile. He wound up being remanded to this institute till the age of 18. So he was supposed to be in there for over 5 years. Well, his mom, who believed this kid could do no wrong, she decided to start this massive letter writing campaign. So she started writing to the governor, and she was writing to the mayor, and to the police chief, and to, you know, the guy in charge of this institution. And she just would not let up. And as a result of that, the police chief himself said, yes, he is completely, rehabilitated. He's completely able to go back into society. He's no longer a harm to anybody because, you know, he's been a model prisoner. He's done everything he's supposed to, and it's all going to be hunky-dory. Yes, I know. So he winds up getting out in March of 1872. Now, at this time, Ruth had enough of her abusive alcoholic husband and decides to kick him out. So she moved to Chelsea. And there she had a shop, and she had him working there. So the people already kind of knew about him, and they were leery of him, and they would tell their kids, you know, stay away from that guy. He's weird. So this particular day, it was in, let me check my dates. So he gets out in March of 1874. Goes to work at Mama's shop. Now he's at Mama's shop. It's March 18th of 1974. And this little girl, Kate Kieran, who is 5 years old. No, she was 7. She was 7 years old. She comes in and she asks if they have any notebooks. I guess she had gone to the store that normally sold them and they were out. And they're like, suggested, hey, go check this store. They might have it. So Jesse is behind the counter and he's like, yeah, I have some. Why don't you come downstairs with me and I'll get one for you. I think it's used and you can have it. So of course, you know, she's like, all right. So they go down to the basement and he winds up killing her. And post-mortem, he actually stabbed her, which was bizarre. So he hides her body in the basement, you know, cleans up and goes back upstairs. So now her mom was like, I know he did it. And she literally put out posters offering $500 reward for anything that would lead to information on her daughter, because her daughter's gone. Now, while this is going on, as I said, she swore up and down. She told the cops, I know he did it. It was him. But the cops are like, nope, we don't have any proof. They actually went to the mom's shop and searched it, and they didn't find anything. So, yeah, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing there. So now fast forward to the next month. Sometime in April, they don't know the exact date, in 1874, a little boy, Harry Field, was 5 years old. And he attempted to kidnap him. And the kid's like, yeah, no, get away from me. So he actually ran away. And thank God he did. So on April 22nd, this little kid, Horace Mann, he's 4 years old. I just can't believe this, 4 years old. And he winds up, Jesse lures him and says, hey, you want to go get some candy and let's go look at the fish by the water. So he walks this kid over to the beach. And it was later reported that a couple of fishermen saw him walking with this little boy down to the water's edge. So apparently he took him to an isolated area and wind up killing the poor kid. Now, when they find the kid, dead, there's a lot of additional, like, oh my God, this is the kid, we got to get rid of him or whatever. But the fact that the fishermen saw him and were able to identify him, he wound up getting arrested again. Now, mind you, he hasn't even been out 2 months, and he has escalated to killing, which is what was going to happen anyway. And one of the things that's very curious is that serial killers normally don't change the victimology, the type of victims they go after. And in this particular case, there was a psychological evaluation after the fact, not during that time, that said that it was kind of his way of killing himself over and over again, whatever that may mean. But the reality was that if by him killing that little girl, it was the first available victim, so it was a crime of opportunity. At that point, he didn't care. He'd been locked up for 18 months, so he just wanted to continue on his violent spree. So now he gets arrested, and the family is being harassed from the neighbors. So the mom's like, yeah, that's it, I'm done. And she winds up closing the shop, she sells it, and she moves the family to Chelsea, Massachusetts. Well, when she sold the shop, it resulted in the new people that bought it going in there, and they found the little girl's body. It was still in the basement. So Kate's body was found. And one of the things that the mom did, which was scary, she actually insisted on having an open coffin because she wanted people to see what he had done to her. I didn't show those pictures because I thought it was a little too much for me, never mind for you guys. So if you're interested, you can look it up. It's very heart-wrenching. I mean, she was in her little burial clothes and stuff, so it was really sad. So now he actually winds up going to court because he got arrested, and he was trying to claim that he was crazy. That's what his attorneys were going to go with. Well, the psychiatrist in the day said, yeah, no, he knows exactly what he's doing. He was never remorseful. He did confess to killing the little boy, and he did confess to killing Kate, but there was really no remorse. Like, he kept saying, well, yeah, you gotta lock me up because I don't know why I'm doing it. So anyway, the insanity defense went out the window, and they're like, no, you're weird, but you know what you're doing. So he winds up actually getting sentenced to death. He got found guilty on the murder of Horace Mann, and he got, sentenced to death. Now, you're talking about a 14-year-old child. So the governor at the time was like, there's no way I'm going to sign a death warrant for a 14-year-old because it was an election year. So he kept kind of putting it off. And then he wind up losing the election. Another governor came in his place, and he kind of like, oh, I'll wait. And by the time he decided to make a decision on it, the whole craziness and the bloodlust that the public had for this kid to get killed had kind of died down. So what he did is he very quietly commuted to a life sentence in solitary confinement. Yeah. Now, the crazy thing about this is that this Jesse was in solitary confinement for over 38 years, which means he was in a room isolated by himself. They even had a guard outside his door. And he tried to escape 13 times. Yes, 13 times. I know. So once he got to a certain age, they're like, you know what? He's been in solitary confinement for all those years. We can put him in the general population, which they did. And the first thing Jesse would do to the new inmates is like, do you know who I am? And they're like, no, we have no clue who you are. So he was still trying to kind of relive it, like, oh yeah, I'm a bad guy. And they're like, yeah, we don't know who you are. You're just an old man. So when he got older, they moved him from the Charles Street jail where he was at, the Charlestown jail where he was at, and they moved him to Framingham, which was like a lower security thing, and he was in the general population. Now, this is a 70-year-old man, and he still tried to escape. And one of the things they talked about was how smart he was, because he literally figured out where the gas pipe was and actually made it explode so he could blow a hole into his cell and get out. Unfortunately, he didn't take into account the backdraft and the back push of that explosion, and that knocked him out. So that was the end of that. And they're like, he's a 70-year-old guy. What's he going to do? Run like after a quarter of a mile, he'll be, passed out. But the thing was that they felt that it was just his desire to continue to be relevant so that he would do this so he'd wind up in the news again, which is so weird. So his mom, Ruth, actually visited him religiously, like once a week, till the day she died. And obviously he wasn't able to go to the funeral. I'm not going to let him go. She wound up leaving an estate of like $2,000, I believe. Which is, I don't know, what do they put it in his canteen or something? I don't know what they did with the money, but that's how much she left. And then, she passed away quietly, and that was pretty much it. The ironic part is that his brother lived a very straight and narrow, low-key life, had no inklings of anything like his brother. So, and his mom was the only person to visit him. I'm like, who the heck else is going to want to visit this guy, right? So anyway, he wound up actually having the record for being the longest lifer in history, because he had been in there for over 57 years, almost 58 years. When he got moved to Framingham. And then he wound up actually passing away at the age of 73 in, I think it was 1932 was when he passed away. Yeah, 1932. Now, one of the things that people speculate about is the fact that they don't think that those were his only crimes because of the fact that, there had been other assaults in that area and where he lived before. And like particular when he was in South Boston, obviously that stopped after he moved. But one of the things was that they never put that together, that it could have been him. And the crazy part is that if he had not been caught, like if he had not gone into the police station that day, God knows how much longer it would have been before they caught up with him, which is scary to think because he was already escalating to the point that he was going to be killing people. And that could have gone on for a long time because, again, no one expected for a 12-year-old child to be doing what he was doing. And that was the one mistake he made. And it's crazy. Like, it's almost like, psychologically, they're like, oh, you wanted to get caught. Well, he did. So one of the things that came out of this is everybody watches Criminal Minds, so you know about the BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit. So that did not come to fruition until the 70s. So at that time, it wasn't referred to as a serial killer. Now, some of the people say, well, the BAU usually says that you have to have multiple people that you've killed, so 3 or more, then they consider you a serial killer. In this particular case, Jesse was classified as a serial killer because he did attempt to kill more than 3 people, and he wasn't successful. And the fact that he got caught and put in jail when he was 12 kind of slowed it down. But he, as you can tell, he got out and he was right back at it, did not care, and he just started killing people. So that, my friends, is the story of the boy fiend from Boston. Now, at the time, He was considered one of the youngest serial killers. And it still goes down into a dark part of history where people are just have a hard time believing. And I know nowadays we still hold that kids are innocent and we don't believe that they could do that. But sadly, with all the crimes that have happened, we know that it does. All right, that is the end of my story. If you guys want to get more information on it, if you go to the Boston Historical Society, they have some really cool stuff in there. And also the Boston Globe Archives have that as well. If you look here, they actually did some articles on that, which I have them on the wall, but you actually see them down here or here somewhere. So that's the end of my story. I am done with this. Now, one of the things I want to tell you guys, you see all that glue mess that's in there? I'm going to let this cure, which means I'm going to completely let it dry. And I'm going to probably let it sit for a day or two. And then after that, I will be able to go in with a Q-tip and some alcohol and be able to take all that out. Now, the cool thing about this glue is you really don't have to seal it. It holds up really well. Hand wash, because you want to make sure that it's taken care of, because you don't really want to put it in the washing machine. And yeah, so this is what it would look like. So this one, I actually put eyeliner on her. Eyeliner, eyeshadow. Eyeliner and eyeshadow on her. This one, I just did the little eyelashes. So, in this one, I let it cure too, so I'm going to clean that up. So, that's basically what you can do. And these are cute to give away. Like, you can put all kinds of designs on them and stuff. So, I am so glad that you joined me for this segment of Crafting and Crime with Charlie. And I look forward to seeing you the next time. Have a good one.